Is the threat real? I mean, I think one of the most deceiving things, having covered the border and having covered drug violence for a while, is that you go into cities like Matamoros, Nuevo Laredo, Ciudad Juarez, and everything seems so normal, and you kind of pinch yourself. You go, well, it's not really that dangerous, and it's not like the stories that I read or the accounts that I hear from places like Baghdad. It is a very real threat. I should point out that unlike the threats or unlike the danger that my colleagues in Mexico feel, I mean, what I felt personally, threats that I felt personally, pale in comparison to that. However, drug trafficking is a very binational organization. As many of you know, gangs operate on both sides of the border, so the danger exists on both sides of the border. And also for many of you who want to be journalists and who are from this area, from this region, I'll share a personal anecdote that can maybe help you. A few years ago, Angela and I worked on a story, and we had a serious death threat. The newspaper reacted quickly and sent us to Washington to take this training course on how to deal and live it in dangerous areas. And one of the things that was interesting was that most of the people who were there were on their way to Baghdad. And I think Angela and I were the only ones living in Mexico at the time. And so it was 3 days of intensive discussions, training on how to stay safe while reporting in Mexico or going to Baghdad. After 3 days, I felt pretty confident. I felt pretty cocky. I thought, okay, I can go back. I'm ready to go back. And I called this old source of mine in the U.S. federal government. I said, hey, let's get a drink. I think I'm ready to go back. And he listens to me for a while, and he says, well, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that drug organizations would not like to kill American journalists because it'll bring much more attention to the situation. The U.S. government may act in a very unfavorable way that threatens their $20–40 billion industry. So you're right. Drug traffickers ideally don't want to touch American journalists. The bad news is that you don't look American. So he said, my advice to you is go back to the U.S. Congress, which every year they give you a congressional pass. It's a congressional press pass. So wear that with you all the time. Make yourself look American. Make yourself look official. So anytime I cross the border, I'm always displaying my IDs. I'm always trying to look American. I've considered dyeing my hair, but I don't think it goes with my look. So the threat is definitely very real.
I'll reiterate what Alfredo said. I think obviously the threat's real. We saw the consequences not too long ago right here on this stretch of border. We've seen many, many other journalists killed or disappeared in Mexico. So we see that, and I will say that obviously the people who work in Mexico full time, especially along the border, are those that are most at risk. They live there. They're in the community, unlike some of the correspondents who come in and out, do the story, quickly leave town. Everyone knows who they are, they know where they live. They're very high-profile jobs, and they're high-profile targets. If somebody wants to send a message, especially about coverage, nothing does it quicker than killing a journalist, and then self-censorship sets in. And that's very difficult for communities that are trying to really understand what's happening. I do go into Juarez frequently, travel up and down the border into Mexico, and the danger is much more real these days. Especially in television news, we pride ourselves on getting there first. Well, I know for a fact that stations in Juarez no longer get there first, because that might mean you won't survive. Usually the bad guys are still on the scene, and you could become a target. Several photographers, cameramen have been threatened. So getting there first, I mean, that's already not one of the things you want to do if you want to stay alive.
Yo les quisiera hablar un poco de lo que hay en el terreno, de la cobertura, sobre todo en cuanto a la información policíaca. Como ustedes saben, en Ciudad Juárez se han registrado hasta la fecha más de 1.300 y tantos homicidios violentos con armas de fuego. Cubrir esto regularmente en años anteriores, cuando se registraban 300 homicidios, que era un récord en 2007. Uno podría, los reporteros, sobre todo gráficos, que son los que acostumbraban en Ciudad Juárez, una ciudad violenta por años, a acudir a la escena del crimen de manera inmediata, a tomar los cuerpos. Esta práctica no solo se multiplicó, ¿no? Hay cobertura de 10 homicidios diarios, etcétera. Esto implica moverse a 10 escenas del crimen distintas en un día, para los gráficos sobre todo, que son los que siempre tienen que estar presentes. Este año, como mencionó, se empezaron a escuchar advertencias por el escáner de la frecuencia policíaca, advirtiéndoles a los reporteros gráficos, sobre todo, por ejemplo, imagínense los que cubren en la noche, en las madrugadas, que andan solos en la calle, que no se acercaran demasiado rápido a las escenas del crimen. Esto implica ya no llegar, y no llegar solos, y no llegar si no hay una autoridad armada. Esto empezó efectivamente a mermar la oportunidad con la que los periodistas en Ciudad Juárez se acercan al fenómeno policíaco, al fenómeno criminal en la escena, sobre todo porque se empezó a generar un margen de tiempo en el que las personas armadas todavía estaban circulando el área. Esto, de acuerdo con lo que yo he visto personas armadas en alguna ocasión, pero de acuerdo con lo que los fotógrafos, por ejemplo, que yo he entrevistado con fines de escribir sobre los riesgos ahora, en estos días, ellos relatan anécdotas, por ejemplo, en la noche, en las que alcanzan a ver a los comandos armados, o que los comandos regresan efectivamente para tener un margen y rematar a las personas, ¿no? El fotógrafo que me comentó esto dice: yo vi que regresó el comando, me quedé con la cámara, evidentemente sabía que no le iba a tomar ninguna fotografía. Entonces es una potencial exposición a personas armadas que no quieren que haya un fotógrafo tomando las fotos mientras se ejecutan a una persona, evidentemente. Ese es el tamaño del riesgo. Ahora, esto yo lo quería mencionar, es específicamente más grave con los reporteros gráficos que cubren la fuente policíaca. No todos los periodistas en Ciudad Juárez estamos en riesgo, por supuesto. Que es muy frecuente que uno no sepa quién es policía y quién es del crimen organizado, ¿no? Esto es lo más común en una situación como la que vive México desde hace muchísimos años. No es ninguna.
My take on the whole thing is perhaps a little bit different. I was on my way over here and I was thinking of a title to give to how I see things, and I think that the best way to describe it is parallel reality. And this parallel reality is something you see but you don't. So, for example, Sandra was saying, well, we don't know who they are. Well, that's the parallelism of it. There is this thing called reality, which is ours, we're here, and then there's this parallel reality, and we don't know about it until there's war. Now we see it. Now it's visible. It's always been there, but I think that journalists nowadays should focus more on the study of that, because that parallel reality is the one we should be reporting about. For example, during my interview with NBC, I was saying, she asked me, well, what do you think of whatever's happening? Well, my take on it is that it mostly is superficial. If you take one drug trafficker, one murder, and you take a look at his life, where he was born, the circumstances surrounding, as we do in the States, by research, academic research even, not only political or even law enforcement research, you will find that person has its own reality. And it started out like ours, going to school, what have you, and then it made a turn. Why? We never, I don't think we take enough time to ask those questions, because we don't care, because we sell newspapers. I think we should be critical of ourselves and really ask, where is this coming from? Is there a gap between what is taught to us at school and how we are raised, as opposed to what we are today? And it may seem like, well, he's taking the part of a crime. Well, that's ludicrous. I'm not, but I really am saying, let's take a look at that parallel reality, because it's true as well. And we can go through many examples of what has happened to us as journalists, but it will never reveal the truth behind, you know, that other reality we should be looking at. That's my thing.